My name is Calla Merrick. I left my sister's startup 18 months before it collapsed, but she transferred the company into my name and told investors I had agreed to take responsibility. She forgot my resignation was notarized, time-stamped, and already sitting in the state auditor's evidence folder. The letter from the state arrived on a Wednesday in a gray envelope with my name spelled correctly and my life temporarily misspelled inside. Notice of preliminary inquiry. Merrick Bloom Technologies. Managing Officer, Calla Merrick. I read that line 4 times at my kitchen counter while my tea went cold. I had not been managing officer of Merrick Bloom Technologies for 18 months, 12 days, and roughly 6 hours. I knew because I had counted from the afternoon I walked into a notary office beside a dry cleaner and signed my resignation while my hands shook hard enough that the notary asked if I needed water. I kept the receipt. At the time, my sister Etta called me dramatic. "You are acting like we are criminals," she said. I said, "No, I am acting like numbers matter." That was the beginning of the end between us, though the truth is probably older. Etta and I grew up in a house where charm got rewarded faster than honesty. She could smile her way out of curfew, late bills, broken promises, and one memorable incident involving our mother's car and a mailbox. I was the one who told the truth too early and ruined the mood. When Etta launched Merrick Bloom, she called it a climate data startup. It was supposed to help small farms track soil moisture and reduce water waste using cheap sensors and a clean dashboard. The idea was good. That is the part people forget when companies fail loudly. Some bad endings begin with good ideas in the hands of people who love applause more than maintenance. I joined as operations lead because I believed in the work and, if I am honest, because I wanted to believe in Etta. For the first year, we were impressive in the way exhausted people can be impressive. We packed sensors in my living room, we drove to county fairs, we answered farmer emails at midnight. We won a small innovation grant and a local business award. Etta handled pitches. I handled invoices, vendor contracts, payroll, compliance filings, and the unglamorous question of whether promises had receipts. Investors loved Etta. They tolerated me. At pitch meetings, she talked about transforming agriculture. I talked about installation delays and customer support. She used words like revolution. I used words like maintenance window. She got invited to panels. I got copied on angry emails. Then the numbers started changing. Not failing, changing. A pilot program with 40 farms became active deployment across 80 sites in investor updates. A pending county contract became secured regional partnership. Sensor returns got logged as upgrades. Refund requests disappeared from the dashboard before board meetings. The first time I confronted Etta, she rolled her eyes. "You have no vision." "I have the customer list, and I have the job of making people believe. They should believe true things." She laughed. "That is why nobody asks you to pitch." I tried to fix it internally. I wrote memos. I flagged discrepancies. I asked the board to separate marketing language from operating data. Etta told them I was burned out. Our mother, Linnea, told me to stop undermining my sister in public. "Investors understand optimism," Mom said. "They do not understand fabricated deployments." "Calla, must you always use the ugliest possible word? Would fraud be prettier?" She hung up. The final break came after Etta sent an investor update claiming we had shipped 600 new sensors. We had shipped 214. The rest were ordered but stuck with a supplier who would not release them until we paid an overdue balance. I walked into Etta's office with the invoice. "Correct the update." She did not look up from her laptop. "No." "Etta, the sensors are coming. They are not shipped. They will be. You wrote shipped." She closed the laptop slowly. "Do you want this company to die?" "I want it to stop lying." Same thing, apparently. I resigned that afternoon, not with a dramatic speech. I had learned by then that Etta could turn any emotion into evidence against me. I wrote a formal letter, printed 3 copies, and took them to a notary. I emailed the board, the company attorney, and our outside accountant. I returned my access card by certified mail. I downloaded my own employment file and nothing else. Then I walked away. For 18 months, I built a quieter life. Contract operations work. Fewer panels, better sleep. I stopped checking Eda's interviews. I stopped letting my mother update me on how much your sister is growing. I did not block them, but I put them on a diet of access. Then the gray envelope arrived. According to the state, Merrick Bloom had failed to account for grant funds, investor complaints had triggered review, and I was listed as the current managing officer after a transfer filed 6 weeks earlier. 6 weeks. Eda had waited until the company was already burning, then moved the paper house into my name. My first call was not to her. It was to the state auditor listed on the letter. His name was Dorian Pike, and he sounded like a man who had never once been impressed by a startup hoodie. "Ms. Merrick," he said, "thank you for calling promptly. I am not the managing officer. We have a filing dated last month. It is false. Do you have documentation?" I looked at the folder in my desk drawer. Resignation letter, notary receipt, certified mail tracking, board email, accountant confirmation. "Yes," I said, "a lot. Send it by secure portal. Do not contact other parties about the inquiry until we review." That instruction saved me from my worst impulse, which was to call my sister and say things our mother would later describe as unfortunate. I uploaded everything. Then I waited. Eda called 2 hours later. "Hey," she said, bright and false. "Did you get something from the state?" I sat at my desk and looked at the gray envelope. "Yes." "Okay, before you panic, it is just administrative. You filed me as managing officer. Temporarily. Without my consent. Kala, we needed someone clean on paper while we reorganized." There are sentences that reveal a person so completely you almost feel embarrassed for hearing them. "Someone clean on paper," I repeated. "You know what I mean." "I do," she sighed. "The company has liabilities. If I stay listed, investors will assume the worst. You left before the messy period, so you are credible. You are describing why you chose me as a shield." I am describing family. "No, family asks before using your name in an investigation." Her voice sharpened. "Do you want Mom to lose her house?" That stopped me. What does Mom's house have to do with this? Silence. "Eda." "She guaranteed a bridge loan." I closed my eyes. Of course she had. Our mother, who thought optimism was a legal strategy. "How much?" $320,000. The room seemed to tilt. "You let Mom guarantee a loan after I left because of false reporting?" "I did not let her. She wanted to support me." "You used her." "Do not act superior. You abandoned us." "I resigned from a company that was lying." "You always need to be right." "No, I needed to not go to prison." She laughed, but it cracked at the edges. "Nobody is going to prison." "Then you will not mind correcting the filing." "Kala, if you cooperate, we can settle this quietly." "With my name?" "With everyone's future." I looked at the secure portal confirmation on my screen. I already sent the auditor my resignation. The silence that followed was the first honest thing she gave me. "You what?" I sent the notarized resignation, board email, certified mail receipt, and accountant confirmation. Her voice dropped. "Why would you do that?" "Because the state asked." "You should have called me first." "You should have not forged my professional life." She hung up. My mother called 12 minutes later. I did not answer. She left a voicemail crying, saying Eda was under pressure, saying sisters should protect each other, saying paperwork could be fixed, but betrayal lasted forever. I saved it. Not because I wanted to re-listen, because by then I understood evidence could sound like a mother. 2 weeks later, the auditor requested an in-person meeting with Eda, me, the company attorney, and the notary whose stamp appeared on my resignation. That last part confused my sister. It delighted me in a grim, exhausted way. The meeting was held in a state office with beige walls and a conference table that made every startup pitch deck in the world feel silly. Etta arrived in a cream blazer, hair perfect, carrying a leather tote. My mother came with her even though she had no official role. She sat beside Etta like moral support could overwrite documents. I came alone with a folder. Dorian Pike sat at the head of the table. Beside him was a woman named Salma Jett from the Attorney General's office. The notary, Mr. Ivers, sat near the end with a small black book. Etta smiled at everyone. I am sure this is a misunderstanding. Dorian did not smile back. We will establish the timeline. The company attorney looked like a man who had recently learned new information and hated all of it. Dorian began with the transfer filing. It listed me as managing officer. The electronic signature was not mine. The IP address came from the company office. The filing occurred 6 weeks before the first investor complaint. Then he turned to me. Ms. Merrick, when did you resign? 18 months before that filing. Documentation? I slid the folder forward. He did not need it. He already had the portal copies. But there was power in paper moving across a table. Etta shifted. My mother whispered, Calla. Salma looked at her. Please do not interrupt. Mr. Ivers opened his notary log. The room became very quiet. People think notarization is boring until someone tries to move a company into your name. Mr. Ivers read the entry. Date, time, identification type, document title. Resignation from officer and operations role. Merrick Bloom Technologies. Signer, Calla Merrick. Fee, $10. Receipt number, his signature. Dorian asked, did Ms. Merrick appear coherent and voluntary? Yes, Mr. Ivers said. She corrected the document date before signing. I almost smiled. Even terrified, I had corrected the date. Salma turned to Etta. Why did your company file Ms. Merrick as managing officer after this resignation? Etta's face had lost some color, but none of its training. Our understanding was that Calla remained available in an advisory capacity. Advisory capacity is not managing officer. The filing was prepared by staff. Which staff? Etta glanced at the attorney. He looked at his notes as if they might rescue him. Dorian placed another page on the table. The filing account used your credentials. My mother began to cry quietly. Etta looked at me then, not angry, not sorry, betrayed, as if I had failed by bringing the floor back under my own feet. Calla could help fix this, she said. Salma asked, how? Etta's voice shook. She knows the systems. She knows the grants. Investors trust her. That is why you used her name? No answer. The meeting did not end with shouting. Real consequences often arrive in administrative language. The state invalidated the transfer filing. I was removed from all officer records. The inquiry expanded into grant reporting and investor representations. Etta's attorney requested a break. My mother followed her into the hallway. I stayed seated. Dorian gathered his papers. Ms. Merrick, you did the right thing keeping records. It did not feel like the right thing when I was doing it. It rarely does at the time. Outside the building, my mother was waiting. Her eyes were red. Etta was nowhere in sight. She could be charged, Mom said. Yes, and the house. You should get your own attorney. She looked wounded. That is all you have to say? I looked at the woman who taught me to protect my sister from consequences until consequences learned my address. No, I said. I also have this. I will not become the name on Etta's mistake, so you can call it peace. My mother covered her mouth. I thought you loved your sister. I did. I do. That is not the same as volunteering for fraud. The investigation took 9 months. During those 9 months, I learned how slowly truth moves when money has been trained to run. Investors wanted simple villains. Former employees wanted distance. Farmers wanted refunds for sensors that had never worked long enough to justify the hope sold with them. Every few weeks, someone sent me a message asking whether I could explain what happened. Most of them did not want an explanation. They wanted a version that let them feel less foolish for believing Etta. I understood that feeling. I had believed her first. The auditor asked me for 3 more interviews. Each time, I brought the same folder and a bottle of water. Each time, Dorian asked questions in a voice so neutral it made panic feel undignified. When did you first see inflated deployment numbers? Who had access to the investor update list? Did you benefit from the bridge loan? Did your mother know the reporting concerns before she signed? That last question hurt the most because the honest answer was yes and no. My mother knew I had left over number issues. She did not know the legal weight of those issues because she had chosen Etta's version, the prettier one, where I was anxious and unsupportive, and Etta was brave. At night, I replayed every conversation from that final year and wondered whether I should have shouted louder. My therapist, a woman named Nadia, asked, "Would louder have made them more honest?" I said, "Probably not." "Then what are you wishing for?" I thought about it. A family that cared when I spoke normally. That was the grief under the case. Not the company, not the gray envelope. The fact that my ordinary voice had never been enough for them until a state seal repeated it. Etta was not sent to prison. She accepted a settlement, paid penalties, was barred from managing grant funds for several years, and lost the company. The investors recovered less than they wanted and more than they expected. My mother's bridge loan became a private disaster she had to handle with a lawyer and a payment plan. I helped her find the lawyer. I did not pay the debt. That boundary nearly broke us more than the investigation did. "You have savings," she said during one awful phone call. "I have savings because I left when the numbers stopped being true." "She is your sister." "And I am your daughter." Silence. Sometimes the most painful sentence is the one that reminds someone you exist separately from the person they are trying to save. The next time I saw my mother, she looked older in a way that had nothing to do with age. We met in the parking lot of the credit union because she needed help understanding the repayment schedule. I sat in the driver's seat of my car with the papers on the console between us. "I thought if I believed in her enough, it would become real," she said. "That is not how debt works." I know that now. The old me would have softened the sentence. The old me would have told her she was a good mother in a hard situation. But I had spent too many years making pillows for other people's consequences. She touched the repayment page. I wanted one of my daughters to become extraordinary. I looked at her then. "One did," I said. "You just did not like how quiet it looked." Her eyes filled, but she did not argue. That was the beginning of our repair. Not warmth, not yet. Just the absence of denial. Sometimes that is the first honest room a family ever enters. Months later, Etta sent me a letter. Real paper. No cream blazer, no pitch language. She wrote that she hated me for a while. Then she hated the notary. Then the auditor. Then the accountant. Then she ran out of people who had signed the wrong forms and had to look at herself. At the end, she wrote, "You were right to leave." I read that line 3 times. I did not frame it. I did not forgive everything, but I kept the letter. 6 weeks after the settlement, I received one final document from the state, confirmation that my name had been removed from every amended filing. It was only 2 pages. No drama, no apology, just database truth. I printed it anyway. Then I drove to the notary office beside the dry cleaner. Mr. Ivers was still there, older than I remembered, wearing a cardigan with wooden buttons. He did not recognize me until I showed him the receipt. "Ah," he said, "the startup resignation. You remember?" People do not usually cry over officer forms unless the form matters. I laughed because it was kinder than I expected. I thanked him. He seemed embarrassed by the gratitude. "I just logged what happened," he said. "Exactly." On the way home, I realized that was all I had been trying to do from the beginning. Log what happened. Not embellish, not destroy, not betray. Just refuse to let someone edit my name into a story I had already left. Now I run operations for companies that want systems before applause. I teach founders the difference between confidence and misrepresentation. I tell them clean records are not pessimism. They are the only bridge that holds when optimism collapses. I still have the notary receipt. It is faded now, the ink lighter near the fold, but I keep it in a plastic sleeve behind my desk. Whenever a founder tells me documentation feels distrustful, I take it out and place it on the table. This saved my name, I tell them. Most of them stop arguing after that. Good, they should. Every time. $10, one stamp. 18 months later, it pulled my name out of a burning building. That is my story. My sister tried to make me the officer of a company I had already left. The auditor asked for the notary log, and the truth had a timestamp. If someone calls you disloyal for keeping records, remember this. The people who plan to use your name are always offended by your paper trail. Share this story with someone who needs that warning, and tell me where you are listening from.